So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna throw out a topic, and I want you guys to just be honest about it. Tell me what you think about that topic. So it's not been prepared, so they don't know exactly what I'm gonna talk about or what I'm gonna say. So I just want them to be honest about this. So my first question is, how important do you really feel drawing is to computer animation?
So everyone can draw in here but me. So my answer is probably going to be different.
So you want to start? Go for it.
Yeah, just because I'm a jerk. But yeah, so I mean, I think drawing is really important because anything that you can do to sort of communicate an idea, I think is very important. If you can do it very quickly in a drawing, if you can do it just acting it out yourself in front of somebody or acting it out in video reference, just any way that you can kind of get your idea in front of somebody clearly, I think that's great, and drawing is definitely a tool for that. I do think that you don't really need to be a great draftsman even for that kind of level of communication. You just kind of need a thumbnail or something that gives you the idea of a pose or an acting choice, or really just kind of maybe even just sort of an action that you kind of want to present. So I don't think you need to be a great draftsman. I think that being able to draw well enough to communicate helps, but I don't think it's essential. But I can't draw.
Well, I think you don't have to be able to draw well, but if you can and you draw a lot, you understand form and poses, good poses, how to communicate what the body is doing better. And if you can draw, it's easier to get that understanding, but if you can't, it doesn't mean you can't still understand that, especially if you're animating in CG.
So basically, knowing how to draw is different from understanding what a pose is.
Understanding what you're trying to achieve.
But you're saying it does help. So would you become a better animator if you know how to draw than if you don't?
Definitely recommend it,
Yes.
I have to say yes.
Ted, what do you think?
I'd say so. Yeah.
Well, I mean, come on. To the animator here.
So Ted has been in the industry for how many years, Ted?
20.
For about 20-something years, and he's been doing 2D for a long time as well. So has 2D helped you in your career? Would you say it was a completely different way of thinking when you're jumping into CG?
I thought it would be more similar, but it is dissimilar. I think what happens is when you were so accustomed to thinking of drawing as a primary means to execute animation in 2D, that you tend to relate the same thing into CG, but it's not the same any longer. It's like bringing in any other skill set at that point. So if you happen to be good at animating in stop motion or oil on glass or whatever, you'd bring those same skills in, but I think there is the relatability of posing, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a skill that you have, but I think it helps. Because we still think graphically, right? We still think in the same manner. And it's just fun to draw.
Still think appeal and curves.
Yeah, but what you said too, though, helps though, because if someone can draw and they're a 2D animator, that helps. But also if they do, stop motion, they can bring that in, and they can also, they understand, animating in a, 3D way as well. So they have that up on the 2D guys also, so there's all that kind of stuff that can help.
In fact, I would argue, wouldn't you, that being a stop motion animator, you'd probably be off to a better start than a 2D animator.
I mean, possibly, yeah.
So now if you don't know how to draw, let's say you've never drawn before, and you want to get into animation, do you need to go now learn how to draw to get into animation, or can you just start CG?
I would say it helps, for the same thing that we were just talking about, but I also think there are some animators that we know that I think are some of the best animators that we do know who can't draw at all.
Yeah,
so
not even stick figures.
Yeah, they can't draw stick
amazing.
figures. They can, and they're incredible, 3D animators.
I think what helps too is the speed. I know appeal and everything, you can get there much better if you draw, but speed, it really helps you on just getting done much faster and getting there quicker. At least for me, I don't rely on the computer to try to get the perfect pose, because it takes me however long it will take me on the computer, just depending on the rig and everything. It's slow, Drawing, you can sketch it out in 2 seconds, be like, that's the pose, and then just actually copy it.
So JP, I mean, I sit by you and I know you do a lot of thumbnails. How many of you guys actually do thumbnails before you start a shot? That's your first planning you do, is you do thumbnails?
Sometimes.
You don't?
Sometimes, but
I would guess you.
Yeah, me too.
That is insane.
I mean, I'll work something out. If JP says I don't want to really commit to something, I'll just kind of do a couple drawings, see if I think it's going to work. But I mean, it depends. I don't thumbnail for acting, but physical stuff, definitely.
Yeah, for me, I actually don't thumbnail, but I feel like it's very, very helpful if you do. Every time I do thumbnail, you go, oh man, I should have done
I
that
should
forever.
to do
But-
that every time.
Yeah,
That's
but
what I'm thinking.
I don't know, it's something about that I get scared to do because I feel like I'm wasting time, but you're never wasting time.
Yeah,
You know?
sometimes
agree.
if I
It
don't,
gets you to a final place faster.
yeah, if I don't know what I want to do in the shot, I could just shoot reference and then get ideas from that, and then I thumbnail based off the reference.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's somewhere to start. You can see what you have in the reference, which isn't going to look good enough to translate into CG, but then I could take that and push it further.
And that probably, brings up something else. A lot of us, our style is very realistic because a lot of movies now go very towards realistic. So knowing drawing as well helps you to push away from that. Whenever you're following a reference, you go, wait a second, I need to have a strong pose or a strong drawing. Then
I
that
agree.
comes back, right?
And I think it's a good exercise for anyone who's aspiring to be an animator to learn to draw. I think it's at the roots of what we do. It's our history. And I think the closer we can come to that, the better understanding we have of the art form. I think it makes you more well-rounded.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
definitely. Like, I think that a big part of learning to animate is learning how to see and just observe and study.
Observation.
Yeah, and drawing forces you to do the exact same thing that posing does. Forces you to look at something, analyze something, and recreate it with just your brain and your hand.
And a simpler way as well.
Yeah.
And it's sexier than clicking a mouse.
And you can't get wrong with a drawing. If the drawing is not good, it's not good. When you animate in CG, like the character looks okay, and then you do a little pose, and it's like, oh yeah, it's great. If you
more
do the
forgiving.
same,
It's
if
way
you do a
more- it's way more
50% good drawing, it looks like a 50% good drawing. If you get a nice model and you put like a half pose there, still it's gonna look okay. I mean, the drawing you can't get wrong. I mean, to me, I learned CG before learning 2D. And I actually felt like I had to go back to school to learn 2D. I actually did like 3 years of school extra, just because I wanted to know 2D, because I knew that it just would make me better, or at least I would just see it better. So I think it's just like, we don't use it every day. I mean, I don't use it unless some netting and like, fixing some poses.
Yeah.
But it's still there. Like it's
And in a
your
sense,
brain works differently.
in a sense too, I think I agree with him where, having that foundation really helps you understand things better. But there's also the flip side where you start to do it so much that it's difficult to animate without drawing. So you jump into CG and you feel like, you can't express yourself because you don't have the immediacy like you're talking about. That kind of tactile feeling was really part of 2D, and you guys have all done 2D. Paper and pencil, there's something to it that's very magical.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ted, I always liked how you referred to CG as your second language. I always
Yeah.
thought that to me is like the perfect metaphor for it, because you are having to communicate in a different medium, and a lot of the problems that you have, like there's words and there's certain feelings and not everything translates perfect. So I always loved
Yeah,
it.
and after 10 years, I think I speak the language now, but I still have an accent.
Very nice. Very nice. All right, cool. So let's move on to a different topic, and we can come back to that eventually.
On behalf of CGTarian.com, thank you for watching. That concludes the first video. Stay tuned for the next one.